Donald Trump has once again been caught in the act, but not by the mainstream press, because the biggest story this week in American media is that the American media is not doing its job. It either refuses to because it's scared of Donald Trump, or because it's owned by one of Donald Trump's cronies, and there are countless examples of stories that have been overlooked for that very fact. Independent media is calling them out. I want to go through them all right now. We have so much to talk about, but it begins with this story. Mitch McConnell. He has been rotting in a hospital bed for a month now, and we know nothing about this. The first report came out that McConnell was found unconscious in his home on July 14th, and since that, it has been basically crickets. It took an independent journalist releasing the 911 call for the mainstream media to start paying attention to the fact that a U.S. senator had just been gone. How was this not a bigger story before, and how are people not more hair on fire about it now? We can't get a proof of life photo, and we're just allowing a special election in Kentucky to slip through our fingers? I think not. But Republicans are clearly panicked about anyone actually pushing for that special election. So like clockwork, they came out with a lie that was just so easy to see through. Remember earlier this week when everyone was going on CNN and Fox and tweeting out that they talked to Mitch McConnell for just under 20 minutes? Nobody believes that. Nobody buys it. But the mainstream media allowed the lie to be pushed. They don't ask what the topic of the conversation was, why Mitch called them, why he was able to pick up the phone, why he won't call in to Fox or CNN, or why we can't get a photo. They also won't ask any questions, it seems, about why Kentucky changed its guidelines for the event that Mitch McConnell or any other senator passed away or was unable to do the job in office. They changed the law to make sure that Mitch McConnell's seat could be protected for a Republican, that Democratic Governor Andy Beshear couldn't step in and appoint a replacement. Why? Because they knew this was happening. They prepared themselves, but the media isn't prepared to ask questions. It is insane. The same thing is happening with Donald Trump's health right now, and nobody seems to be paying attention or asking the questions that are needed. But it is not just a cover-up of health that the mainstream media has missed. It is also the fatal cover-ups, the cover-ups of killings that they do not want to pay attention to. Earlier this week, Lorenzo Salgado Orojo, a 52-year-old man who lived in this country working hard for 35 years, he raised a family. He contributed to his community. He built a life in America. He lived the American dream. And he had his life taken from him by ICE. I've seen barely a headline about this. It has not been covered nearly enough. But do you know what has been covered by the right-wing media and, of course, the Fox propaganda outlet? The story from DHS. And it's the same one that we saw with the lies told about Renee Good. Weaponizing the vehicle, using it against these agents. They feared for their lives, but none of that is true. We have seen the footage. We know what happened. They are always telling the same lies, but the mainstream media has barely called them out for it. It took journalists on the ground reporting this story. Lorenzo's son found out on Facebook. That should never happen. But it's what's happening now. Ignoring the killings from this administration, that's what the mainstream media does. On-the-ground reporters, they cover it and make sure we get accountability, which will be a fight for the months and years to come. For all those that ICE has killed. It is disgusting, and it is more than disappointing that the mainstream press has not covered it. But this is the pattern we always see. Instead of covering the actions that this administration takes against you, against me, against all of the citizenry of America, they're just waiting around for Donald Trump's next post. Yes, we can cover the crazy things that he posts, but we can also cover the crazy ways that this administration is attacking us without getting caught up in the shiny object that they're trying to throw our way. Like the mainstream media is covering the fact that Donald Trump is tearing down the White House once again, but they're not covering the correct reason. I want you to take a look at this shot of the north portico of the White House. I want you to take a shot, actually, look at this shot of the aerial view of the White House. They are tearing it down, tarps over the scaffolding. And of course, their official reason, what is it? Security. Trump's security. That's what they want you to believe. But security from what? He's not protecting himself from what he claims is a threat from Iran. No, the threat that Donald Trump actually worries about is you and I. He's worried about the threat of your vote. That is what Donald Trump is more scared of than anything. He does not even want to win these midterms at this point. He just wants to be able to steal them. And if that requires him to head down to his bunker with an unlimited supply of Big Macs and hang out with Natalie Harp all the time, which is a story that the mainstream press also hasn't covered enough. Why did Donald and Melania not sleep in the same bedroom or the same state, but all of a sudden he's got this aide always with him writing love notes? Yeah, we've caught on to that, but the mainstream press, they just haven't. And speaking of notes, let's also talk about the death note that Donald Trump just made very public. He says he's given explicit instructions to bomb Iran endlessly for a year if he's taken out. Donald Trump is obviously thinking about when it happens a lot, and he's trying to pretend that he's worried about Iran doing it and not all the hamburgers that he has ingested over the last 80 years of his life. But we know what Donald Trump is really thinking. He's thinking about the end, and he's just trying to use it as a pretext for more war with Iran. The mainstream media, yeah, they're not going to talk about him threatening to wipe out an entire civilization again, or the lockdown that is happening at the White House, who they are kicking out as Donald Trump bulldozes the entire building. Also, speaking of panic and destruction within the White House, let's talk about Kash Patel and his crusade of corruption that once again has not gotten enough attention. Kash Patel was summoned to the West Wing on Friday to get yelled at for his corruption. Now, this is because Chuck Grassley just sent a letter demanding a greater explanation of why Kash Patel is using all the private planes in the world. He wants records on these flights. He wants to know their use, and he wants to be aware of why Kash Patel thinks that this government doesn't serve the people, but instead his desire to be a social media influencer. Jamie Raskin and Dick Durbin have jumped in as well, bringing more attention to a whistleblower complaint about Kash Patel jet skiing. He was doing helicopter tours. There was a VIP scuba diving tour at Pearl Harbor that was a story for about 2 seconds. How has this not gotten more attention? Donald Trump is bulldozing the White House, locking it down, and the reporters who show up to that building every single day are not asking the questions necessary. They're not asking the questions that are necessary about ICE killings, Donald Trump's health, when the 25th Amendment will finally be brought up, and it is driving me crazy, which is why I brought guests on this week's episode of the show who are just as upset as I am. Rick Wilson and I are going to talk about Donald Trump's health. Congresswoman Pramila Jayapal and I are going to talk about the need to abolish ICE. And for one of the crazier stories that has been overlooked, Congressman Chris Deluzio and I are going to be talking about John Fetterman starting a joint fundraising committee with a Republican. I know it's not surprising, but it's disgusting and it needs to be covered. And it is all going to be covered right here, right now. And as always, it's going to be you, it's going to be me, it's going to be my great guests, and it's all happening on Sunday. Rick Wilson, thank you so much for joining me on Sunday.
Hey, Jack, good to be back with you, brother.
And good to be talking shit about Donald Trump's health, which is where I want to start. It's something that I'm constantly doing, but considering that the mainstream press is either not allowed to because their corporate overlords say no, or they're just terrified. We're going to war with the Islamic Republic of Japan. He can't walk straight. He slurs every word he says. What is going on in your mind with the geriatric presidency?
Look, there are two gigantic cover-ups in Washington happening right now. The Epstein cover-up is the mega cover-up. That's the cover-up of all cover-ups. But the other cover-up is that the White House staff knows, the Secret Service knows, the Trump family knows, all Trump's political staff know, and the mainstream media covering Trump in the White House know that he is in a terminal decline. He is not well. He is not healthy. He is not mentally there at all anymore. There's a reason why he's, why he confuses people all the time and goes off on tangents and falls asleep. He's dying. Let's be real about it. Donald Trump is dying. I don't know what is the thing killing him other than old age and obesity, but this is not even the guy that ran for president in 24. To say nothing of the guy that ran for president in 2020 or 2016. He is a very diminished figure. He clearly has health problems. All the scabs and the bruises and all the weird bleeding, all of it should be top story, front and center every day. New York Times, Washington Post,
yes,
Politico, everywhere else. But as you point out, they don't want to lose their access to the White House. They don't want to lose their access to Susie Wiles and Chris LaCivita and Stephen Miller and Catherine Levitt whispering secrets in their ears that they want to dump out there. And so we're watching him rot and fall apart in real time. And these people are pretending there's nothing wrong. It is, as for the journalists who know what's going on or who see it closer than we do, they do not report it with the sufficiency I would argue that legitimate editorial interests would demand. Some of them, I think, are being told, you may not cover this story.
Yeah.
Others.
Do you think some of them are waiting for the book deal too? Like the after the fact, maybe then I'll start to air it out a little bit. Because a lot of this Haberman and Swan info is recent. Some of it's dating back to the Epstein stuff, which I would have loved then, but a lot of around what's happening with Iran right now, it's recent. Do you think some people are just waiting on the book deal and that's part of it? Or do you think
most
it's
people
just
don't have a book deal like Jonathan and Maggie had?
Yeah.
Okay. Most people aren't going to have that deal. And let's be very real. Jonathan and Maggie have a uniquely closer relationship with Trump than almost 95% of other journalists do. He calls her at 3 a.m, right? Mm-hmm. So I would argue that most of them aren't as close in, but they can still see what's happening. And look, they're in the White House. They're talking to people. They know. And as much as this White House thinks it's very disciplined, it still leaks like a sieve. Mm-hmm. And a lot of these reporters know. Look, I guarantee you, there are 10 reporters in D.C. right now who know exactly what Mitch McConnell's medical status is. Maybe more. They're not reporting it.
And like that video from a few days ago of him getting carried out on the stretcher.
Yeah, it's been around for a few days.
Then like, if that's from the 14th, what were we doing with that? Why were we hiding this? Why did it?
Why is every reporter in DC not asking the question over and over again to Mitch McConnell's office? What is his health status? When can we see him? Well, let's have a proof of life. He is alive. As I like to joke, the Andor joke of the Lincoln Project has friends everywhere. We know from people who are very much clear that he's in a certain rehab wing or for acute cardiac failure, all this stuff at the hospital. He is alive. Our source is not able to say if he's conscious or cogent or
he doesn't look very living. I mean,
but
like, what's being reported is not very living, but like, yeah.
I don't think that the magical 20-minute conversations of Mitch McConnell, calling he's perfectly fine. I think we're going to find out all that was a lie because they want to run out the clock on the special election question in Kentucky. If I'm Bashir, Andy, brother, just declare the election.
Yeah, make them do it. We're always on. We're always on.
And if they want to prove that Mitch McConnell is alive and well, God bless them. Go do it. But that is not something I think they can prove. So I think there's no way we're going to get the Washington D.C. press corps to nuke their relationships in order to get a story anymore. Which is exactly the problem I think with a lot of mainstream media today, is that Washington is a village. It's a small little village, and everybody has to get along with each other, they think. And so sometimes they don't want to press too hard. This is a matter where the control of the U.S. Senate is absolutely on the line. When McConnell goes, it changes the chemistry of the Senate. And Jack, I think that this is not a matter where the Democrats have been treated the same way. When Joe Biden's health scares started to mount up, we had 24-hour day coverage. It never stopped. Mm-hmm. They were beating the White House down every single day about it. When the July 7th debate happened in 2024, that was a clock that went off because the media drove the story. They pushed and pushed and pushed and pushed. They turned over every rock. We don't see that coverage about Trump. We don't see that coverage about McConnell.
And I just wonder why Democrats don't act. Well, I know, because it's what we do. Like we don't act, historically have not. Yeah, it is the Bashir. Like he sent a letter and it was like, okay, he's demanding, but then you you're like, okay,
Right.
why a letter? Like, haven't we been making jokes about letters for a long
have
time?
we not learned that certainly worded letters do not work in this world anymore? They do not work.
It's not breaking through. It was good that like he had said something. I'm glad
he did it. I like Andy. He's tremendous. I think he's absolutely a rock star. But to secure his
24-hour clock,
status, now is the time to push the real button. That is to just declare there's a special election coming. Mitch McConnell is incapacitated and cannot hold this office. We must replace him. The real secret is MAGA is desperately trying to not have a special where Thomas Massey would win that seat. That's what they're really afraid of.
It's also funny that we're allowing this to happen. And I want to take a little this conversation into the place of like, what needs to change? Because something I've always really admired about you is you get some grit in the oyster, right? You're going to, let's actually break things. Let's make things happen by breaking things. Let's not take the shit. And, you know, it's funny that we're kind of allowing this. It's not funny. It's sad because McConnell was the guy who pushed for the change in the law that Bashir could not appoint a senator if he had died, because it was going to be him because he wanted to stick around. So they've already done the caveat, the change, the protect themselves. So knowing that they already work to serve their interest and not doing this also makes it especially insane, which makes you come back to the Trump of it all. You know, Raskin has got the 25th Amendment Committee. He's got independent doctors. There's people who are pressing on this. You know, Ansari, Murphy, these people do a good job calling for it. But what else do you think, if you are a Democrat in the House or the Senate, what else do you need to be doing? Like, do you need to just like, you know, jump up and down and wave a sign in front of the White House every day, or like bring a pillbox?
Part of it is that. Part of it is that. Part of it is to consistently confront administration officials and make them keep lying to you, make them keep perjuring themselves. Because when we have the majority, in about 195 days from now, their world is going to suck in many, many ways that they cannot anticipate right now. It won't be Kash Patel or Todd Blanche glibly lying to people. It won't be White House people saying, fuck you, I'm not going to tell you. The oversight process with inherent contempt and everything else changes the ball game for all these people. And Democrats need to be preparing for that. Look, they've got to walk and chew gum. They've got to prepare an economic agenda that's going to keep the voters they're going to win this fall on side. But they've also got to hold the corruption to account. And it is not what Democrats want to do. They want to go in and go, here's our 957-page climate plan that will do this and that. And God bless it, right? It's not a bad thing to have that, but it's a bad thing to stake your political future on it. They need to see, you know, there's a phrase we use in the South. If you were at a dog fight, you want to see some fight in the dog. You want to see people who are going to fight. You want to see people that are going to go out and scrap. And the Republicans have it all wrong about these progressive candidates that won last week in New York. It wasn't because they were just progressive. That was part of it. But it was because they were out there saying, I'm going to fight. I'm going to take the shit, and I'm not going to take any shit from these people. I'm going to push back. I'm going to punch bad guys in the face. We're not going to put up with this shit anymore. That is appealing to voters at a level that the sort of corporate Democratic class does not and cannot seem to understand.
And it's the using of the political capital. Like you talk about the New York races, that's Mamdani going immediately, okay, here's my power, here's my coalition. I get more backers, I have more candidates, I can make more endorsements, it's more powerful, DSA infrastructure, organizing infrastructure, all of that. And yeah, you're right. It is what we have severely lacked. And it's funny considering how the actual Democratic base is in the opposite camp, like actually doing stuff. I've wanted to have you on the show, and we bumped into each other a couple of months ago, and I said, I've got to have you on the show soon. And what really, it was a reminder that, I needed to, is when I saw you talk about the flock cameras. And this is something that I really cared about, because I cannot imagine a better lane for Democrats to get in that and get in that fighty spirit. And it does like align with a lot of what they want to talk about on the policy stuff, kind of like breaking up the monopolistic search engines, going after Palantir, all of these stuff. But there's all this grassroots. Can you offer up the advice that you shared about the flock cameras that went really viral? I love this.
I will. Let me just say this. I think the flock camera issue and the surveillance culture issue is a way where Democrats could actually win over some libertarian-leaning Republicans who are not into this whole fucking 24/7 1984 police state bullshit.
Without ceding the values either. Like you're not ceding anything. You're not, welcoming in the former Republican. No, you're just going out and saying this is bad. I completely agree.
This is bad. You don't have to make it into a wider problem or a wider discussion. You make it into a one lane. Sorry, the power's flickering here as it does. You make it into a one-lane discussion. You make it into one thing that makes sense for people. And as I pointed out, we've got almost 100,000 of these surveillance cameras around the country now that track your license plate, your face, your Bluetooth devices on your body, your phone on your body. They're building a giant database of everybody's movements and information. And so what I said, and I'm not the first to say this, but you should definitely, absolutely not go on Amazon or eBay and purchase a $14.95 green laser in the 1 milliwatt or better power range between 495 and 525 nanometers in wavelength. Because if you were to shine a laser like that on a flock camera, which you would definitely never want to do, if you were to shine that laser on a flock camera, it would cause damage to the very sensitive electronics in that flock camera. One thing I also did not point out in that previous statement about this was, to our friends in the tweaker community, each flock camera contains several pounds of precious metals that can be recycled, copper and silver and some gold even. But you don't want to mess with those. You want to keep those up there because those things would cause absolute chaos if people were trying to take them apart for their precious metals.
These are things we're telling you not to do.
Absolutely don't do that. That would be very, very, very wrong.
We're not celebrating. We're not giving instruction. We're not allowed to do that.
Not in the least.
This is
no.
Please,
and
please,
there are
nobody
people around the country who have discovered that flock cameras can also be. You can also take a garbage bag and put it over a flock camera. They've discovered that. I'm not tall enough to do that. I'm only 5'10", so I can't really read. You're a tall guy. You might.
You look tall though. You got tall personality to you. I'll go around.
But yeah, people are rejecting these things because they're built to abuse power. They're built to provide the flock Palantir big tech sector with more control over our lives. And that's why there's a grassroots thing about this in the country. And again, I think this is an area where you have progressive Democrats, you have libertarian Republicans, you have pissed off independents, and you have people who have felt their privacy eroding over the years to the point where they feel like it doesn't exist anymore. And this is kind of a last straw with people.
And I also think that the arguments and the lies are so bad. Like I think it was Flock or it was Ring or it was one of the other ones that ran the commercial where they're like, "We'll be able to find your dog." And
right. It was Ring.
Like,
yeah.
It was like, well, you'll be able to find me too. And I don't want that. I don't want my whole neighborhood being a surveillance state that I don't know where the information goes. So people don't like the lie, and the lie is bad. And I think that hopefully a lot of politicos and pundits and consultants and whatever the class, whatever, is kind of waking up to the fact that, and you're a person who's been in the strictly like pro-democracy coalition for a long time.
Yep.
And I think you have an interesting perspective on this then. Who of the Democrats do you like the most, who speaks to maybe not the ideological strain of anything? And like, I'm a progressive. I like more progressive candidates, but who do you think? Maybe I think Ossoff is a great example, but who do you think he's the number one, or are there others that you like in kind of speaking to just the people?
Yeah, look, I got to tell you, when and you remember this, you were around at Lincoln Project in 2021. We dove in to help Ossoff and Warnock in the special right after the election, and at the time, our thought was like, "Yeah, man, Warnock is great. He's such a great communicator. He's such a great presence on screen. He's not going to need as much help as Ossoff. Ossoff's a great guy, but he's not a naturally talented speaker." I don't know where it came from. I don't know what did it, but he woke up one morning on the side of the bed and started delivering these incredibly powerful, deeply connecting speeches. And there's one of my favorite speechwriters was one of Bill Clinton's speechwriters. I admired this guy even when I was a Republican. His name was David Kuznets. He wrote a little book called Speaking American. And John Ossoff is speaking American. He doesn't sound like every other Democratic, candidate. He's not running through the sort of cliche list of things that you like as a Democrat, but that kind of go from a lot of voters. And for a lot of voters, they're not hearing when Democrats speak the key messages, which I'm listening to you. I care about you. I'm going to fix this crazy shit. Ossoff is talking to them that way. Tallarico is obviously talking to Texas voters that way, which he's been a real blessing, I think, for a lot of for a lot of Republicans who are uncomfortable with Trump and with Paxton because he comes across with his faith forward, which a lot of Democratic candidates have been uncomfortable doing in many races over the years. And he comes across as a guy, again, who's more relatable as an ordinary person than the various billionaire weirdos that are showing up in the Republican ballot lines. Look, I think that there are a bunch of different Democrats in a bunch of different lanes who do great communication with Americans. Mark Kelly is not like a natural gifted orator, but when he talks about America and when he talks about service and when he talks about our security, he's got a great, I mean, I look at that and I'm like, day one, Secretary of Defense. You know, there are a lot of Democrats out there who are learning to speak American. And it's been a long time coming. And you don't go into these races this year unless you're talking about the economy and relating to what's wrong in the lives of the voters. And if you do that, it's a superpower.
Yeah. And I think that we're going to see it play out, hitting corruption, hitting affordability.
Absolutely.
The sprinkle of Trump is bad because Trump is bad. And we know that, and it's going to be successful in the midterms. Hopefully enough. Big wins in the House, hopefully taking back the Senate. But then 28 comes, and it is going to be it's going to be grueling, and it's going to be a lot of infighting, and it's going to be a lot of camps.
The good news,
and
Jack. It's good. The good news is the Democratic Party is going to go through a murderous apocalypse, like 500 piranhas in a barrel eating each other. But the great news is the Republican Party is going to make that look like high tea at an English castle. They're going to have the most bloodthirsty, vicious, fuck you infighting that you've ever imagined in the history of ever. There is nothing you can compare to the moment that's going to happen when Trump is either dead or off the political stage. He'll try to stick around. He's going to gamble with it. It won't work. But these guys are going to rip each other's fucking guts out. It's going to go so crazy to be the replacement for Trump. They're going to try to out Trump every day, and nobody wants that.
Do you think Tucker's going to get involved?
Watching J.D. Vance and Marco and Cruz and DeSantis and all these 100 other dipshits are all going to get in to be the replacement for Trump, including, by the way, I keep telling people not to short this one.
Don Jr.
Yeah. Including, and again, no matter how many times he says he doesn't want to do it, Tucker Carlson might get in this thing.
And Tucker wants it too. They want the attention.
Tucker wants it. Oh, yeah. And here's the thing. If you're ending up with a Republican primary field or a Democratic primary field, let's be honest, that has 15 real serious candidates in it and 5 or 6 very, very well-funded serious candidates in it, that means when you go to Iowa or New Hampshire or South Carolina right off the bat, you only got to win 10, 12, 14% of the vote to win the state.
Yeah.
It's going to be a long primary. There's going to be a lot of bleeding in the Republican primary over that period of time. And the scenario is bad for Republicans in one of two ways. Either Trump's dead by then, which I think there's even money on that because he's so unhealthy. And they're all trying to define Trumpism after him. That is a huge piece of the Republican electorate is going to go home and never vote again.
Yeah.
Or he's going to be alive, pissing in the fucking, side of the arena every day, talking about what he wants from them. And they're all be chasing the Trump rabbit every day.
Do you think JD has locked down anything? There's some murmurs around. Maybe there's a little JD lean instead of Marco. I know there was the who do you like
Griffith
more?
Came out and said today he would back Marco, which is, one billionaire down and 800 to go.
It's the billionaires love Marco, which is kind of funny to think that, I know they'll have the money, but, the average Trump voter, I don't really think is caring what, Andreessen or any of these guys have to say.
No.
So it's funny that they think they have influence over that. The donor class does. It's pretty laughable, in fact, that they haven't realized what their base is at this point.
Yeah, they're in the same position that I warned Republican elected officials about way back in 2015 when I went against Trump initially. I told elected Republicans, many of whom were my clients and friends back then, My grandmother taught me a lesson when I would sit out on the dock by the lake and throw fried chicken at the alligators, throw chicken bones at the alligators. You're going to run out of chicken bones one day, son, and that alligator is going to come up on that dock and chase you. They're going to run out of chicken bones. They don't have enough to give the MAGA base after Trump. They can't go to the heights of insanity. You know, what's it going to be? I'm going to build a 5,000 foot tall statue of Trump in Washington. I'm going to rename Washington Trump C. You know, there's no way they can do those things, especially because the damage that Trump has done to our economy and to the country ain't going to go away. We're going to live with this radiation for a decade. We're going to live with this radiation of all the damage the tariffs and the wars and all the shit have done, well, maybe longer than a decade, for a generation. And they're going to own all that shit. They're going to own all that pain.
So what do you think is going through JD's mind right now then?
So JD is still has the tech bro contingent, from what I understand, largely in his pocket. He thinks he's going to build a post-Trump Trumpism, which is Trump with some of the raw edges sanded off, Trump populism without Trump corruption. He's going to take a few very mild steps of, we're going to have a kinder, gentler Trumpism, basically. I think that's where JD's brain is at right now. I don't think he's right. I don't think that sells to two big important constituencies. One, MAGA. Two, Fox. Fox relies on a constant stream of fear to the MAGA base. Constant stream of Antifa is coming, the trans kids are coming, all the bullshit, right? JD Vance trying to be Trump light, to be diet Trump. They don't want diet Trump. They want all
diet
the
Trump
sugar
with a side
and all
of
the
Catholic
caffeine
revival and a little weird misunderstanding of religion. No, I agree. And that's why Tucker is the much more interesting character to me as someone who can do the sell, because he's been there before. And you said this, and this is where I want to close, because you're a busy guy, can't keep you around all the time, although we're going to have to do this again.
Absolutely. Happy to.
Because I don't think we called Trump enough names with regards to to his health and the blubber and the fat drug that he claims he's not using, but I think he's using.
I'm definitely not on any of the fat drugs.
Quite frankly, it's a wonderful drug. I know nothing about it.
I know nothing about it except my appetite is.
It's not a great situation there with the health conditions at the White House. But we were talking about before we hopped in how, and you just brought it up, dealing with this shit for a generation. And it's not just going to be enough to be like, okay, the people who believe in democracy and the people who are, there's enough corruption on both sides. But I mean, I think we're moving out of a lot of the corruption, hopefully, in the Democratic Party.
Democrats need to stop the fucking stock trading in Congress.
Yeah.
They could score a massive political win by doing that. Massive.
Stop taking the corporate money. There's plenty of people who want to get rid of that. Of course, does not pale in comparison to the 2.2, 2.6, whatever billion disclosed to the crypto cash. But it's just an important thing to put out there. It's not enough to just be like, all right, we're here. That fixes it, and we're good, and we're going to say good things, and we're going to be nice. What is it that you think needs to most fundamentally change within the party that's going to be able to make fundamental change?
One of the most mechanical things that Democrats stopped investing in back in the 2000s was voter registration. Mm-hmm. If I had $1 billion from a Democratic mega donor right now, I would spend $999 million of it on voter reg in the states. You have to ask people to be with you. And they stopped doing it in a lot of big states. And that is a huge, huge mistake. And Republicans have invested and invested and invested and invested in voter registration. I mean, they have a $1.5 million advantage in Florida because you know what? The Democratic Party spent less than $1 million a year on voter registration in the third largest state in the fucking country. It's unforgivable. They also need to get into a posture where the Democratic Party becomes about what's going to help the voters in this country, the working families in this country, the middle class in this country. For too long, too many parts of the Democratic constituency were like, well, we've got to help our private equity friends. We can't leave them behind. America's struggling mom and pop hedge funds really need our help. And look, you've got a lot of Democrats who are in the big tech world as well. They need to come to Jesus also and say, we're not letting Google control 90% of all search. We're not letting the AI companies rape and pillage our IP for every American citizen. We're not letting these data surveillance companies monitor Americans' movements or follow their phones or their license plates around the country. There are a lot of ways Democrats can show Republican and independent and Democratic voters they give a shit. And that is a big part of this. It's like, get out of being the party that voters think, oh, they care about Washington and New York and Los Angeles and San Francisco. Get into being the party where they think they care about me in Charlotte and in Jacksonville, Florida, and in Daphne, Alabama. If you tell them you care about them and offer them economic help, they're going to take it. They need it. Yeah. They're desperate.
And if you break stuff doing it and show that you're breaking stuff and show that you're changing stuff and break stuff and then fill potholes. Zoran Mamdani.
Yeah, right. Yeah, you know why I knew it was bullshit that the billionaires are like, I'm going to leave New York. Not a fucking one of them has left New York. Okay, not a fucking one. You know why? Because the guy ran a campaign that was about affordability in New York, and when he got in the mayor's office, and I've been a senior advisor to the mayor of New York City in my career. I have been there. I've worked in City Hall. 99% of what the mayor of New York does is not seizing the means of production for a socialist revolution. 99% of what the mayor does is fill potholes, go to a water main break, go see a firefighter who got injured at a fire, go to an elementary school and talk about school safety, go out to a city park and watch a little league team play on a Friday afternoon. The things that Mamdani is doing that's driving the MAGAs nuts. Like, he went and jumped in that pool the other day during the heat wave. What a brilliant move. Humanizing, relatable, fun, smart.
It looks great.
Funny.
Always.
They've got, there is a world where you show people you're like them and that you care about them. There's another world where your opponents are a bunch of fucking Peter Thiel, Elon Musk, Alex Karp weirdos. Weirdos. And they hate being called weird. MAGA hates being called weird. But they're weird.
They are. It's the thing they are most. And you're right. We should never have abandoned Tim Walz doing it. Y'all did it for a while. That's why I do it so much. I want to say thanks for being a guide and light in the grit and the oyster and the calling people out and giving people shit and saying the things. And I appreciate you as always. I'm glad we finally did this. It's fantastic.
Yeah, man, I'm glad too.
Nobody listened to the flock advice that we did not give. We didn't give any advice.
No, we absolutely did not advise you to do anything. We advised you what not to do about these flock cameras, which are just so totally on the up and up from a really good company that just means all of us very well. And no one could ever abuse the data they collect about you. So don't worry about it.
And that's where we'll end. Rick Wilson, thank you so much for joining me on Sunday, man.
See you, man.
Always fantastic to be joined by my good friend and old boss, Rick Wilson. He is fantastic. He tells it how it is, and we need more of that. And that is exactly what we are going to do with Congresswoman Pramila Jayapal. Congresswoman Pramila Jayapal, thank you so much for joining me on Sunday.
Well, thank you for having me.
Yeah, of course. And I wish it was under better circumstances. But I think that the story this week that has just gone completely undercovered was one that I think it has contributed to this lack of coverage been because of just where the media is at right now, a fear of Donald Trump, corporate consolidation. But it was the fatal ICE killing of Lorenzo Salgado Orojo. And I think that I just want to say I have had a hard time with this week. What was your first reaction when you saw this news? Was it surprise? Was it disgust? Was it I'm not shocked that we're here again?
It was all of those things. You know, I'm the top Democrat on the immigration subcommittee, so I have been doing everything I can to hold this ICE and CBP and DHS accountable, and it is one shocking cruelty after another. So yes, disgust. It stuck with me, you know, just watching the videos, watching the news unfold, watching his son at the press conference, the cruelty and the complete lack of any accountability, the racial profiling. Yes. I mean, I could go through the complete list of things that led to this fatal shooting. And also the fact that this is a pattern. This is not, you know, this has happened many times before. In fact, there have been 10 reported ICE-related fatalities just since Donald Trump took over. And in none of them do we see any accountability. In fact, what we see every time is what we saw in this case with Lorenzo, which is they lie. And,
Yes.
We don't have the video footage yet, so I guess I have to reserve judgment until I see it. But this is a pattern where they say that this is a situation where the individual weaponized the vehicle. That's what they said for Renee Good. That's what they said for Miramar Martinez. That's what they say in all of these shootings. They come out strong with an account instead of actually investigating. And then the same pattern of, not... they removed all the identification from his body, Jack, and they booked him as a John Doe. So the family can't get the body back. And my subcommittee staff is trying to work with ICE to get the body back for the family and figure out what exactly is going on. And they're trying to, they've detained some of the eyewitnesses. And once again, they're refusing cooperation with local and state law enforcement.
And Lorenzo's son said in that incredibly moving press conference that he found out about this via Facebook, and that he had to call his mom to make sure she didn't find out the same way. And, it's difficult with these conversations about gun violence in America that's just become so commonplace that it has to be a situation that interests the media enough. It has to be enough people killed by gun violence in the same place at the same time that is compelling enough to our national media. And it's the same thing with the inhumane treatment at Delaney Hall or any other, ICE concentration camp or these killings, that it just has to be the right combination of things. I remembered after the killing of Alex Preddy, there were more Democrats in the House who previously had said, well, I don't think we need to step in that much with ICE, kind of change their tune. And it just made you think, are you just waiting for more people to be killed? Have you heard from maybe kind of your more, I don't want to call them conservative, but more centrist-y Democratic colleagues in the wake of this killing about their position on ICE, or has it just kind of been the same?
Not yet. I hope to be able to do a sign-on letter where we push people to come out and say this is outrageous. I know the Houston delegation led by Sylvia Garcia did a statement, I think. But here's the thing. This man, Lorenzo Salgado, was somebody who built the houses that Texans are living in, built the office buildings that Texans are working in. This is a man who for 35 years was building things for America and cared so much about his family and his precious tools that he was afraid somebody was going to steal his tools. And that van, which was unmarked with these masked officers, come up. Why would somebody believe that those are law enforcement people? I think the situational piece is so horrific, but you're also right that it actually shouldn't matter what the situational piece was, what the immigration status was. The fact that we have Homeland Security officials from ICE and CBP shooting people in vehicles, ramming vehicles into their vehicles, and then lying about it, that is not permissible anywhere in the country for anyone, because these are human beings we're talking about. And so, we have more work to do on the Democratic side. We have seen finally more and more people coming out to say that, ICE is out of control. Of course, we kept people together on not giving a cent more to ICE and CBP for funding. But Jack, they put $210 billion into ICE and CBP. Republicans did that. And, the reality is there's very little measure that we can take without Republicans coming forward. So we got to work on our conservative Democrats, who I think finally started to learn lessons from Alex Preddy and Renee Good. But we've got more work to do there. And we've got to get these Republicans to actually care about their U.S. citizen constituents and undocumented people who have been living here and doing the work in their districts, and all of the others in between, to actually stand up to this administration.
Senator Ruben Gallego recently had an interview with Mehdi Hassan and Zateo, in which he said that he does believe that ICE does not need to exist in its current form and it needs to be taken down. But using the phrase abolish ICE is not something he will do because he says he wants to win elections. Now, in the interview, Senator Gallego didn't really elaborate on that more. What do you make of this notion that coming out that clearly and that strongly is something that will cost Democrats electorally? Do you believe that?
I think that may have been true back when abolish ICE was first used. I don't think that's true anymore. And I think I'm somebody who feels like it doesn't matter what you want to call it, but we have to disband ICE. We have to melt ICE. We have to abolish ICE, whatever word you want to use. What we need to get to is the end result, that ICE should not exist as it exists. And DHS should not exist as it exists. Like,
Yes.
There's no reason for DHS to exist. Immigration is a civil enforcement matter. It is not criminal. And that's what people keep not understanding. It is a civil enforcement matter. It used to be done out of the Department of Justice as a civil matter. Now it's been criminalized. It's been put into this massive agency that was created after 9/11 that should not be there, is completely unaccountable and sprawling. And so, I'm glad that Senator Gallego is saying that now. I wish he would have thought about that when he voted for Lake and Riley, because I do think that, but I also think that we're seeing a shift, I guess, is the main point, and that the country and the cruelty is motivating that shift. I wish people had stuck up for immigrants a long time ago. It's been an argument that Democrats have made for a long time. Don't talk about immigration, it's controversial.
Yes.
The exact opposite is true. We should lean into it. We should talk about it. We should explain it. We should defend immigrants and the role that they play in making our country what it is today.
Thank you. Because I don't know why we continue to allow ourselves to kind of fall into these traps. And it's something that I talked about so much on my show at the beginning of the Trump administration, where there was just so much, well, maybe we'll hear him out. Maybe we'll try it out. Maybe we'll see if it works with Lake and Riley, with DOJ, with all these different initiatives that the administration was undertaking, that we knew what direction that they were going in. And we just kept ceding territory because the idea was that there was some massive cultural conservative shift after the 2024 election, which just wasn't there. We see that now in polling. Do you think the Democratic Party knows now not to cede these arguments, or is it going to take something, certainly in these primaries that are happening right now across the country, but from the top down in leadership, or do you think this is something that's gone bottom up? And the idea that we should be talking about immigration in a way that brings like value, and it actually speaks about it and the value that it brings to this country, how it built this country, how it's still building this country.
Yeah. I think that the shift is happening. I don't think we're fully there. I think that there are things that have, that are making a big difference. The grassroots bottom-up movement is making a huge difference, right? That shifted public opinion in Minnesota. It's shifting it in these Democratic primaries. And so it is pushing. But here's the ultimate problem. If you are a Democrat who sticks your finger up in the air and decides where the polling is, and then just goes along with it, not sticking to a core set of values or a set of beliefs, number one, that's a problem. Number two, because the polling might change. Look, immigration is a tough issue in the sense that we have not passed for 30 years a real immigration system that works. And so it allows the Republicans to weaponize immigration. And that means the polling may go up and down over time. But the thing that will move that polling is for Democrats to take a strong position, explain what's wrong with the immigration system, and not buy in. The second problem is, if you think you're going to keep getting votes from Republicans, a cult party of Donald Trump, and you cater your message to those tiny few Republicans that you might get, or maybe some independents, you are going to lose the base of our party. And that is what has happened, is we haven't had people who are standing up strongly to oppose the cruelty of immigration policy, to oppose AIPAC, to oppose, big money in politics, all of those things. And so people lose faith, and that is much more detrimental to the future of the Democratic Party in some ways, because we can't just be an opposition party to Trump. Trump is hopefully not going to be on the ballot again. And
hopefully that at least
proposition. We're going to have.
I thought you were going to say hopefully won't stick around that much longer. I'm like, we might get some Mitch news too. I was like, yeah,
I would love that. I would love that. But this guy is he's a criminal. He's a criminal. He's a rapist. He's a lot of things. And so I just think that we have to remember who the base of the Democratic Party is, and we have to lean into arguments on immigration, not put our finger up in the air and figure out where the latest polling is. By the way, the polling is very good on this issue right now.
It is.
So for those people who are putting their finger up in the air, you see where they are. But I don't want them to move back to a different place. I want us to really commit as a Democratic Party to immigrants are good for this country. We need immigration reform, and we are not going to criminalize and throw immigrants under the bus.
Because we keep losing to the couch, and we're going to keep losing to the couch if we're the opposition party. You wrote a really incredible piece that I suggest everyone check out in The Nation a bit ago that I thought was very pertinent to what we've been seeing over the past couple of weeks in the way that Republicans, and specifically Donald Trump and his kind of magnified Great American State Fair, how they've wanted to frame America as something for the capital owning class and for the wealthy and for the elites and for Trump, really just for Trump. For those who watched what Republicans did on the 4th of July, what Donald Trump did, and kind of the language around who is a patriot and who isn't, and can I be proud to fly the flag? Can I be proud to call myself an American? Can you speak a little bit more to it was a long journey of becoming an American citizen and what it meant to speak with naturalized citizens and to still have this view of America as something that can be great, something that we're still striving for?
Yeah, I was born in India, and I came to the United States by myself. My parents had very meager savings, and they took just the few $1,000s that they had, and they used it to send their daughter all the way across the ocean by herself at the age of 16. That's when I arrived in the United States. I went to college here. And, my parents made that sacrifice knowing that I might never live on the same continent as them. And when I asked them why they did it, they would always say, America is the greatest country in the world. You have opportunity there like you don't anywhere else in the world. My dad just loved America. And so many people around the world love America for the values that it represents. Not that we come in thinking it's a perfect country, but that the proposition of actually making it a more perfect union is really exciting to all of us. It took me 17 years, and I call it an alphabet soup of visas. I mean, H-1B, student visa, F1 with practical training. I mean, all these different things that I went through to finally become a U.S. citizen after 17 years. And a very traumatic journey along the way where I almost lost my green card status because my daughter was born so early outside of the United States and I couldn't leave her bedside. And that day when I took that oath and I swore allegiance to this country and gave up and renounced citizenship to everyone, to every other country, any other country, was so profound because there were people from all over the world who had made incredibly difficult journeys, much more difficult than mine, to come to this country, escaping war, escaping persecution, drought, for a better future, for an economic opportunity for their family, for their kids and their grandkids. And to this day, it moves me so much to think about that moment and what it represented and how proud I was to be a U.S. citizen and how proud I am today to be a U.S. citizen. And so when I speak to naturalized citizens, as I did on July 4th, just last weekend, to the group that was being naturalized from countries around the world, and you think about what the journey means, but also what it means to bring your culture, your background, your heritage, your traditions, and to make the United States a better place through our engagement. That to me is the most profound piece. And it ties back to what Benjamin Franklin said when he was asked whether this is a monarchy or a republic. And he said, a republic, if you can keep it. That's the work that immigrants and people across this country are engaged in, is trying to keep and perfect this country that was built on such profound values.
and built by all of us as a collective, and bringing different things, different cultures, different ideas. Zoran Mamdani and his inaugural speech, which I was very lucky to be in attendance for, and I froze my ass off. I couldn't walk for about an hour after. It was like -9 degrees in New York, and there was no sun, but it was worth it. I couldn't walk. My feet were frozen. People brought hand warmers that they were putting in shoes, and we were standing.
So beautiful, right? I mean, people were so excited.
But it's funny because in that speech, and why I bring it up, aside to say, I'm so tough and everything, is because the mayor actually talked about moving away from, rugged individualism to the literal warmth of collectivism that we experienced that day with people huddled together, watching him be sworn in. And I think that is the same with this conversation, especially in the World Cup, about multiculturalism, where we are seeing people come together, and you're seeing when you know more about people, when you see more of people, you're not able to have the powers that be play on the emotions that would seek to separate us, the fear, the anger, whatever it may be. How do you think in this next 250, and this is a big question for you, I'm not asking you to solve it, just in this conversation, how do we really define ourselves as a country of immigrants again, and as a country of a collective again? And how do we move towards a place of community again, do you think? Not just in our policy, but in the ideals that we espouse, that we want to be together in community, that is, and sorry, this is my little soapbox here, but as AI algorithms are designed to keep us addicted to short form video and to seed our analytical thought to large language models, and we're just increasingly isolated. How do we do that? I know that's a big question, but
it's a huge
who else
question.
could I ask?
It's a huge question, but I think what it's about is actually taking back some of the words and redefining them, right?
Yes.
You brought up FIFA and the World Cup, and I was at the first US FIFA match was here in Seattle, and I was at the front of the parade. We had ropes for security, and unfortunately I have to have security with me because of all the threats I get. But I was at the front of the parade, and I was chanting USA, USA. It was just so beautiful, like all these people there, and there was such goodwill to each other, no matter what country you were rooting for. And a guy came up to me, made his way through the security rope line somehow, and said, "You hate America. Why are you chanting USA?" And I said, "No, I love America. I'm so proud of America." I think we have to redefine what it means to be a patriot. Being a patriot means that you are working to make the country better. You are proud of the country you're from, and you know it has more potential. What does citizenship mean? Citizenship is not just a piece of paper. It's what you do for your community. It's how you show up for your neighbors. It's when you give food at a food bank. It's all the things that we do to show each other that we are a generous people. I was in Wisconsin in Racine just yesterday doing a town hall in a Republican district. And, the voters there are so frustrated with their representative who doesn't do in-person town halls, who doesn't vote for his constituents. And I said to them, the thing about Wisconsinites, I know because I've been rescued from a snowbank by Wisconsinites when I got stuck in the snow because I don't know how to drive in snow. I live in Seattle. But I said, you are so generous. The American people are a generous people. You wouldn't know it from looking at the actions of the administration, but you do know it when you look at the actions in Minnesota when ICE and CBP came in. You do know it when you look at the groundswell of humanity that is coming about around Lorenzo Salgado Araujo's killing, and the people that are coming there to celebrate who he was as a human being. You do know it when you look at Zoran's inaugural speech and everyone that came from all walks of life in New York City to celebrate a man who is so much more than any of the individual things that define him, but is setting out a vision where we all have a part and we all can thrive, not just barely survive. So I think we have to take back some of those words and redefine them, but actually define them as they were intended in the beginning. All of our founders talked about dissent is patriotic. We need to reclaim those words, and we need to build the society from the ground up, both through political candidates that we elect, but also through the way that we treat each other. just through the love and the generosity that we share with each other and welcome people in, no matter what our color of skin is, no matter what our immigration papers are. If we are helping our community forward, that is the world we're trying to create.
I couldn't agree more. I needed that. I don't have a mic stand or I'd applaud, because I needed that this week. This has been a long week. This has been a long, tough week. And as someone who spends most days kind of railing against what the mainstream press misses, it has especially been tough knowing that the mainstream press is increasingly consolidated. But I just so appreciate you and your work, and it felt like a hype up speech. So I so appreciate the time, and thank you so much, Congresswoman.
Well, thank you so much for what you're doing, for keeping up that hope, because hopelessness and powerlessness are tools of the oppressor. So it's important what you're doing, and your voice matters. Thank you for having me on.
Thank you so much. Just such an incredibly moving story from the Congresswoman. And I do recommend you check out that piece in The Nation, because it is incredible. A less incredible piece was the one about John Fetterman that I'm going to get into with our good friend, someone who's been on the show before, not this show, but my show, and that is Congressman Chris Deluzio. Congressman Chris Deluzio, what was your reaction when you saw that John Fetterman is starting a joint fundraising effort with a Republican?
It's crazy stuff. I mean, at this point, John Fetterman is fundraising to help the Republicans keep their Senate majority, keep their House majority. I mean, we have battleground races in Pennsylvania that we are trying to flip. And now we've got John Fetterman helping the Republicans raise money to beat Democrats. It's just crazy stuff. There's no good explanation. I don't get it, man. I just really don't get it.
Do you have worries? I know it's been reported in Politico, it was about 2 months ago, that Fetterman said, "No, I'm getting outreach from Republicans about switching parties, but I'm not gonna do that." Do you believe that, or do you think that there's still a possibility? I know we're certainly not hoping for that, but is something you're worried about more and more every day?
I don't know what to believe, and what I know is Pennsylvanians elected a Democrat to the U.S. Senate. And in the 2 years that John Fetterman has left in the Senate, he should be a Democrat, period. That's what the voters of Pennsylvania elected. That's how they elected him.
Yeah, and because of, there's so much we could talk about with Fetterman, but 2028 has already become a conversation for who's going to primary John Fetterman. I know you can't announce on this program that you have that intention or are going to, but what do you think the Democrat who eventually does primary John Fetterman and becomes the nominee for Senate in 2028, what qualities does that person need to have?
You got to be able to win. You got to be able to understand that for Democrats right now, opposing Donald Trump, that's fine. He's made a wreck of the country. He started a war. I could go on and on of the ways Donald Trump has failed. It's not enough. You have to have a strong vision for what you're going to do to turn this ship around so that people's lives are actually lives they can afford. What you're going to do to rip up corruption. What you're going to do about corporate PAC money in our elections. So I think all of that is how we're going to win a Senate race. And I don't think at this point, a senator and John Fetterman, who's helping the Republicans keep their majority, is how we're going to do it.
Yeah, around that conversation specifically with dark money, there are those in our party who are still taking corporate donations, who think that they need to represent the interest of corporations. What needs to be happening inside the party? Obviously, voters are going to continue to make their voices heard, and I think we've seen that in elections, including those in Pennsylvania, but across the country. What needs to be happening from leadership, or kind of the young upstart leadership in the party, to make that push even more?
Look, I push for more and more Democrats to do what I've done, which is to say, reject corporate PAC money, run strongly on that in a battleground district, as I've done, but run in a safer blue district. And here's the thing, Jack, our voters are already with us on this. They don't like it. And I think you're seeing it play out in a lot of primaries for Democrats, where folks who have taken corporate PAC money are, facing the wrath of the voters. And so I think the public's with us on getting this money out of our politics. And that's the way it's going to change. When you have members in the caucus, in the House or the Senate, saying no.
Yeah, and obviously they're going to be facing their voters. Obviously, those people seem to be running a little bit more scared. Besides, affordability is obviously the crisis that we're in right now, and it is an issue that is front of mind for everybody. Besides affordability, the dark money that's in politics, Donald Trump's failed war on Iran, which I want to talk about because he's been posting anything he possibly can to make it worse over the past couple of days. What would surprise folks to hear is something that is constantly coming up in conversations for you and your constituents in your district?
The corruption fight is like, I could be in the most conservative part of my district doing a town hall or senior discussion, whatever, it comes up. Like when I'm talking about in congressional stock trading bans, the folks with the MAGA hats are not nodding along with me. I think people are sick and tired of it. And yeah, there's a whole strain of this corruption that's Trump and his family. And you saw the billions that he made, through his financial disclosures with crypto and otherwise. But I just think the corruption that is throughout our government is a place people are pissed. They want us to fight it. It links up with all this spending, whether it's the super PACs or the corporate PACs in our elections. I just think they're tied and folks are tired of it. They want us to break it and they want to see us take on corruption. No questions asked.
I saw Zohran Mamdani talking recently about the way that he has been able to make local government effective in New York City and kind of going back to that Reagan quote, which I think has been driving so much of how conservatives and the Republican Party try to frame our government, which is, the worst 8, 9, whatever it is, words in the English language are like, I'm here I'm with the government, I'm here to help. Yeah. When we talk about corruption, I hate the idea of undermining any faith in the belief that government can do big things and can structurally change people's lives. How do you think that conversation needs to be had in a way that is both bringing back belief that government can do things for you, but also is saying, yeah, there's things that are broken right now, but we're gonna fix and change them and hold people accountable?
I think that's absolutely spot on, because the corruption to me infects your trust or distrust of government and whether you're willing to say that government can do something to change what our economy is like. I don't think it's some accident that the Republicans and corporate politicians for decades rigged our economy and the rules of our system, where dividends and capital gains are treated more favorably than your paycheck working a working class job. Right? That happened because they had power and they undermined, trust in our system. And I think to earn it back, you got to sniff out that corruption, but then we should want government to work and be effective and move quickly. If you look back, even before I came into Congress, the infrastructure law, the Inflation Reduction Act, lots of good stuff. But I would think most people on the Democratic side say too much bureaucracy, too much red tape. It didn't move quickly enough. Like, we should fix that. And whether it's in New York City or otherwise, I know you mentioned Mayor Mamdani, like, great, let's find ways to streamline government all over the country. Like that's an important thing. And that should be something that Democrats are way behind.
What are some ways you would like to see that?
Man, think about examples of those infrastructure investments. It can't take 5-6 years to get money in the ground, to get new broadband, right? And so if Democrats are trusted to govern again after 2028 with the White House and the House and the Senate, I have no interest in seeing it take 5-6 years to put shovels in the ground for projects to make people's lives better. And let me say something too. There's a lot of talk about affordability. That should be like the minimum, okay? Like just getting by should not be the end of our ambition. And so making it so that your hard work translates into a life that's good and decent. I'm talking about picking where you want to live, be able to start a family, retire, go to the doctor, go to a vacation. The basic stuff that ought to be in a country as rich as ours, stuff you can have, that should be what's guiding us. And that's going to be, frankly, the fights we're going to have if we take the majority around what is an economic agenda. I've got lots of those ideas, but we have to have those arguments now. And that's much bigger than just Donald Trump is bad.
Yeah, how do we make sure, because you're right that the affordability, we just kind of slap that on the message and keep pushing thing. Like, it's not enough. There needs to be a broader conversation about what America can deliver for Americans. So how do you think that message around what can be and what can be the day-to-day economic lives of Americans, how does that get more aspirational than just like basic needs met? We want people to have their basic needs met, and it's great when your basic needs are met. I saw a woman make a video about the rent freeze in New York where she said, like, this is the lowest my stress has been in years, knowing that my rent's going to be frozen for the next 2 years. But how do we make that more aspirational and maybe exciting?
Yeah, and look, I've been a little bit on the trail talking about, my grandpap as an example. Okay, he's serves in World War II, comes home, working class guy, works at a union job for the city of Pittsburgh. And you know what? At that time, that meant his life could be, he could own a modest house in the city. My mom got to, go to the doctor when she had to as a kid. He got to retire with a pension. They had health care. She had to go to a public college working in the summers and wasn't, suffering with crippling debt. All of those kinds of things feel impossible to people. And that's a problem. So when I'm describing that life that could happen for that guy, that was because our government decided that his hard work should pay off. And we should be dreaming at least as big as that and bigger. And even take like this healthcare fight we've had. You know, I've been clear the Republicans should have extended these tax credits under Obamacare. That's like small ball minimum stuff we should do. I'm a Medicare for all guy, right? We should be in this country dreaming much bigger than just tinkering on the edges of whether you can afford your healthcare when you get sick, whether you might have to roll the dice over bankruptcy because someone in your family gets a cancer diagnosis. Like, we have to just dream bigger.
Yeah, and it's going to be difficult to do so if Donald Trump wants to spend hundreds of billions of dollars on endless wars. I know that there are lots of reasons why Donald Trump has chosen to continue this conflict, to start it from the beginning. You could talk about the corruption of Witkoff and Kushner. You could talk about, Donald Trump's cognitive decline, the need for the 25th Amendment, because he just seemed confused and out of it and talking about maple trees rather than, actually doing the job. What do you think is the biggest reason right now that the fighting is just continuing, that Donald Trump doesn't seem to want to make a deal or is just frankly unable to?
Because he's demonstrated by starting this war, which was stupid. And I say that as a guy who sailed through the Strait of Hormuz, who's a veteran of the war in Iraq, which was another dumb war. Donald Trump started this war, and he's now shown an inability to keep even the Strait of Hormuz open. The Iranians have realized they have this leverage if they didn't realize it before. And I wish he had a time machine to go back and not do this. And so, I want us out of this war. I want peace. But, man, he has shown the limits of what he can do and what the Iranians can do to hurt all of us at the gas stations and, frankly, with the cost of everything. Because when you layer on top of this, remember, the Trump administration canceled a lot of clean energy projects, which made us even more exposed to Middle Eastern oil shocks. It's really as dumb as you can piece together when you connect the dots of what these guys did.
Especially with Hegseth in the months before going on the neocons didn't know what they were doing podcast tour, only to become that guy. And he was pushing for it. In the reporting from Maggie Haberman and Jonathan Swan, it seems like it was Trump and Hegseth who were most convinced by Netanyahu. And Hegseth was responsible for the deaths of 13 service members so far and hundreds injured just because he didn't think ahead. When we retake the majority in the House, what do you want to happen to Pete Hegseth?
Well, he should go. I mean, I'm shocked Donald Trump hasn't already fired this guy who seems to be one of the worst advisors in his cabinet of terrible advisors. He should have fired him already. I mean, look, I'm on the Armed Services Committee. There are going to be hearings and oversight. It started with the signal stuff, as you remember, where he was communicating classified information. It's now the bungling and the mismanagement of this war. And by the way, this war, this has not gone poorly because our military didn't do their job. They were given an impossible and stupid task, and it cost Americans their lives. It cost Iranian school children their lives, and it's cost all of us money at home. Billions for the war, yes, but the gas prices and oil prices, we are all paying for this blunder, and Pete Hegseth is a big part of it.
Obviously, we'd like to see him gone, but do you think that he'll be prosecuted for his war crimes?
I have no idea what Donald Trump's Justice Department will do to any of these people. I mean, I think looking at January 6th, this guy seems willing to pardon people who commit the worst kinds of crimes. And I know the talk is, folks around him all brag that they'll just be pardoned for whatever they've done that might have been illegal in office. It's dangerous stuff. It's, by the way, why we should be looking at amending the pardon power for the Constitution, because it is just so ripe for corruption. You saw it with the January 6th pardons.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And it's just another way that we can talk about corruption. Donald Trump is literally selling them. Have you seen these stories about, go to Mar-a-Lago, $1 million dinner, and then you get a little pardon in the mail? It's wild, isn't it?
It's crazy. And again, we should take this off the menu for any president. I don't care if it's a Democratic president. I was pissed when Joe Biden pardoned Hunter. They should not be able to abuse this power. There are proposals out there. We should take them seriously and find a way to bring this to some kind of realistic use of the pardon power.
Well, we got a lot of work ahead of us, and I appreciate you leading the charge on so much of it. Congressman, thank you so much for joining me on Sunday.
Thanks, Jack.
Always great chatting with Pennsylvania Congressman Chris Deluzio, who you should certainly watch out for in a 2028 primary against John Fetterman. I'm not speaking for the congressman, but it's certainly something to watch. Now, before we go, we have to get to our favorite segment, and that is the Idiot of the Week. And you will not be surprised to hear that this idiot is Carolyn Levitt. Yes, this week's idiot is the White House press secretary who has really blessed us with her absence over the past couple of weeks. But unfortunately, Carolyn Levitt has come back, and she has come back with a fury, and she has gotten herself the Idiot of the Week award. And why? It is because she decided to go on the Fox propaganda outlet and talk with Jesse Waters, which is usually enough to get you this award, but then she really decided to step it up. At a time in which we are seeing an affordability crisis, Carolyn Levitt decided to lecture us all on why young people can't afford gas and groceries. Both Levitt and Jesse Waters were decrying the rise in popularity of leftists and democratic socialists like Zohran Mamdani, saying that young people just don't know what they're doing. They want everything handed to them. They need a silver spoon. Gen Z is lazy, said Carolyn Levitt, in one of the worst clips I've ever seen. We just unfortunately have to take a look.
Some of these kids, and I call them kids because they're in their 20s, and they've never had real jobs, and they're complaining things are expensive. Yes, things are expensive when you don't have a real job.
That's right.
Do you think that's getting traction, complaining?
Unfortunately, I do, because this generation, my generation, I hate to say it, Gen Z and those younger than me have been raised with just silver spoons in their mouth, just getting everything handed to them. That's not the values this country was built on. It was built on meritocracy and hard work, pulling up your sleeves, pulling yourself up from your bootstraps, and achieving the American dream. And we need to protect it with all we got.
Is it laziness?
A little bit.
Is it because the professors said country's corrupt, it's evil, and we just need to shake them down and hand money out?
It's laziness, and it's the liberal indoctrination.
All right. I say, if they misbehave, just make all these young kids join the army, right? Shape them up. I almost had
or send them to Cuba. Send them to Iran. They'll want to come back real quick.
That's a good point. They can say hi to the gay Ayatollah.
Not only is this take stupid, it's wrong, it's out of touch, it's stuck in 2019, but it is also blatant hypocrisy from Carolyn Levitt, who herself, although she doesn't look it, is a Gen Zer, but a Gen Zer who grew up with the silver spoon in her mouth and still has one. Carolyn Levitt grew up very wealthy. Carolyn Levitt went to a private school that cost her $20,000 a year. Carolyn Levitt left college to go work for a Trump world, which isn't really work. Carolyn Levitt then left Trump world to run a failed congressional campaign, which is still $300,000 in debt. Illegally, mind you. Carolyn Levitt then married a 60-year-old multi-millionaire, and he bailed her out of her campaign, although she still hasn't paid her donors. That is the origin story of a woman who is now lecturing my entire generation about why they can't afford eggs or gas, which have seen the cost double during the Trump administration. It is just wild and blatant hypocrisy. Carolyn, you grew up and have maintained a silver spoon in your mouth this entire time. Do not talk down to my generation. Carolyn Levitt has never had to survive and pull up her bootstraps, and I just don't think that she is in touch with reality. It's why she works in the Trump administration, which, by the way, is responsible for this crisis of affordability. If you want to attack anyone for complaining, it should be your boss who complains he doesn't get credit for causing this crisis. But also, the idea that Carolyn Levitt, who doesn't really work, going and yelling at reporters without using facts or logic or the truth, that's not work. Donald Trump also doesn't work. So to say that Gen Z is just lazy and complacent and wants everything handed to them is just nonsense and hypocritical. The truth is much different than the reality that Carolyn Levitt is trying to put together right now. Young people are rightfully furious with this Trump administration, and a lot of Republicans too, because we can't afford anything. My generation left college walking into an economy being torched by a madman with dementia who loved tariffs more than he loved my generation being able to afford gas or groceries. And we certainly don't even dream of home ownership anymore because of Donald Trump. But Fox and their propaganda outlet try to spin it all up as a generation of lazy people who got participation trophies. By the way, they were handed to us by the previous generation. I don't know why we're getting blamed for that. And so Fox is trying to pretend that it's some character flaw, individuals not living up to the American dream, when in reality, it couldn't be further from the truth. If you want to look at the personally flawed character of billionaires, that will give you a much better explanation for this crisis of affordability. They want you to think that you're struggling not because Donald Trump and billionaires steal your wages, steal your labor, steal your tax dollars to give to themselves in the form of huge tax cuts, bailouts, or billions of dollars for Elon Musk to blow up rockets and claim his company is worth trillions of dollars. No. The problem isn't them. It's apparently us and some liberal professor lying to you. None of it makes sense because they're not trying to make sense. They're trying to distract us with the same old repackaged millennials and avocado toast lie, so we do not look at the failures of this Trump administration and Republican politics broadly. This is just such a lie from Carolyn Levitt, such a shameless lie from Carolyn Levitt, and it is why she is the idiot of the week, for going on the Fox propaganda outlet and for telling you that you're not able to afford what you need to live because of your character, because you don't work hard enough. You work for the laziest man in America. You don't do an actual job, Carolyn. You spit poison and lies for a living and pretend that it was a hard day of labor. It is not. It is a lie, and you are the idiot of the week. And we are going to continue to call out all of the idiots of the Trump administration on this show, in the Idiot of the Week segment, in the monologue, in our interviews, and on so many other parts of this show. And that is why I am so glad that y'all have been tuning in, that y'all have been supporting on Sunday. It is why I'm so glad that we were able to be joined by Rick Wilson, by Pramila Jayapal, by Chris Deluzio, excellent guest, and why I always got to thank the guys who helped make this happen. Ben, Brett, Jordy, Mycelis, the MeidasTouch brothers, absolutely crushing it. And the show is crushing it as well because of y'all. So I just want to say thank you. And your support goes so far. And this show so far has been incredible, and I'm incredibly proud of what we are building and what we have already built. So we're going to keep on making it happen. Again, thank you to all y'all who tuned in. Thank you to our guests. Thank you to the brothers. And I hope to see you next week. And I think you know when. It's always this same time. It is always this same place. And it's always going to be on Sunday.